And I am one who does not believe in patting oneself on the back. We are here to do a job, and we are doing it. But I am satisfied that this government has, since 2018, shown an understanding and an expression of policy coherence, that there is a particular path, there's a particular journey, but there's a particular destination that we want to reach, and that whether it be youth, sports, and community development, health and wellness, transport works, water resources, whatever area, people empowerment and elder affairs, that we make sure that we are in step and in sync. I am reminded, sir, of the population policy that I had the honor to lead in this place some weeks ago, debate on which I had the honor to lead, which aligns completely with this policy on aging. And in fact, when one reads this policy, it is clear that it is based on evidence. It is one of the other things that many governments often find hard to do, which is to actually relate the things that it does to what is happening on the ground. Not because you saw one thing somewhere, but because we do the research, we talk to people, we hear what people are saying, we see what people are experiencing, we feel what they want to express, and policy flows from that. It flows from a rigor of information. This information comes from the population and housing census. It comes, no doubt, from some of the administrative data that the agencies in the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs collect. And perhaps, sir, that is where I want to start. Because one of the important things that I think that we sometimes overlook is that in the carrying out of the duties of officers in the field, whether it be National Assistance Board or National Disabilities Unit or welfare, that work itself gathers information that must then further inform policy. And I think, for example, of the Community Elder Care Program, and the fact that as I sit in my constituency office in Tweedside Road every Wednesday afternoon and speak with residents of St. Michael South Central, sometimes the people who walk into that office are people who work in the Community Elder Care Program or other programs of the ministry, and they come and they say, you know, one of the things I have to go back to the ministry and report is that I am seeing certain things in certain households that I don't have immediate responsibility for, but that are causing me concern. And that this older person that I take care of has certain needs and deprivations in other areas. I recall that one of the things that I recommended, that I discussed with the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, is the extent to which we are capturing that information and documenting that information. That there is a way to come back to the ministry or to the department and to be able to report, not just that I was here for this number of hours, but that I was here for this number of hours, and that this has been the experience of this older person. This is a report not just on what I've done today, but on some key indicators of how that person is living. But that's how we collect information. And that information has to further inform policy, like the policy on aging. But sir, I want to have reference to the 8 pillars that were identified in the situational analysis that was done, and then that were further pursued in this policy. Financial and economic security, social security, which is really the extent to which people are protected with pensions and social protection and so on. Health and health systems, as the Honourable Member pointed out. The physical and built environment and the social environment, the legislation that supports all of these, how are we investing in long-term care? And then what is the emergency plan for dealing with the particular vulnerability that is represented often in aging populations? I want to touch, sir, on just 4 of these quickly, and then to look at 1 or 2 of the cross-cutting considerations that the policy also highlights. I think one of the first things to acknowledge is the question of care. And the honourable member who led the debate said very correctly that we have to consider what is the level of investment in care that the state can support. What is the level of state investment? And what is the level of family investment? The two have to complement each other. And when we consider what is the level of state investment in care that a government can support, sir, I started an exercise that, if he permits me, I will now pass over to the honourable member for St. Michael South, because I think that it benefits him more to complete. But last night I was going through the policy and going through some of our numbers and started to compute the level of investment in care that this government makes as a percentage of GDP. I confess that I didn't finish the exercise. But what was instructive is that I had not yet finished and was already above the Latin American and Caribbean average for investment in care as a percentage of GDP. It means, sir, that this Barbados government is batting above the average for how much we invest in care already. And I'm sure that when the honourable member finishes the computation and comes back to this honourable place, we will be well above the average. Why do I focus on this? It is to support the point that he made that we, even as we continue to strengthen those investments, we have the community elder care program, we have expanded welfare benefits, increased welfare benefits in terms of the amount. We have investments in community programs that young people and people who need specific kinds of care can benefit from. And the list goes on. I know that as part of BERT, the first Barbados Economic Recovery and Transformation Plan, we were documenting and computing investment in care. And it strikes me that we have to continue, because I dare say that the record of this government on care investments is perhaps the best and the highest since independence. And it is no small thing, but what does it mean? It means that there is a balance of investment that any government has to have. So there's social investment, but there's investment in infrastructure. There's investment in health and wellness. There are all kinds of other draws, national security. There are all kinds of other draws that we have to manage and to balance. And it means then that that conversation, this national conversation from which this policy benefited, becomes more and more important. So it is one of the reasons why in the Ministry of Industry through Export Barbados, we have also started to build out and are near completion of the build out on daycare facilities and elder care facilities at Pelican in Bridgetown. And this comes from a legacy and an up till now unfulfilled commitment that is about to be fulfilled to be able to provide care facilities where people work and have the expression of their lives. And for many, many years, women who were working in what we then called industrial parks, and probably what many people still do call industrial parks, who are working in that area found that there was no care nearby. That when it came to daycare facilities, there was no quick option for them to be able to make sure their children were safe and cared for, but not just safe and cared for. What are we doing at the facility at Pelican? We know, and the minister responsible for education transformation, the ministers responsible for education transformation, would tell you that one of the most important investments you can make in education comes from 0 to 3 years old. And so one of the things we're taking the opportunity to do is to make sure that those young people and those older people who will be benefiting from those care facilities at Pelican are also learning. So for us, digital inclusion in the very early years and also in the very later years is tremendously important. And when I come to talk about the issue of elder years, income, and earning capacity, we'll see how and why. But at those facilities, it is not just about having people there and watching them. There was a time when that was what care was. People would say, I ain't got nobody to keep the child. And really what they meant was to make sure that the child survived the 8 hours. But we know it has to be more intentional than that. And then it has to be about what are the skills and knowledge that you are imparting and facilitating? What is the play that you are helping children engage in? What is the social interaction that you are helping older people engage in? Sir, we see so many people who retire from their formal jobs and go home. The people who have the greatest prospects of living well and surviving long are people who are able to stay active. Notwithstanding the other health indicators, people who have social networks, people who have things to do, people who have things to look forward to. The member for St. John spoke about the swimming program that his ministry put on. And I turned to the member for St. Michael South and I said, boy, thank goodness for that program, because my mother loved that program. And the length of Barbados, everywhere I go, people see me and say, how are you, mommy? And I don't even know that these people know my mother. And I say, she's doing well. And I look at them, you know, to get further information on how they know her. And they say, she swims with me. A whole network of older people who have found community in this swimming program. So I'm putting the member for St. John on notice that please allow my mother to have some further recreation through the program. But these things are important indicators of health and wellness and longevity, and we know this. And so the facilities at Pelican will include training in technology, because the other part of this conversation is that the digital divide is not just what is happening between countries in the global north and the global south, and the fact that we don't have as much capacity and compute power and so on. The digital divide also happens in countries where those of us who have not grown up in the AI and the quantum computing generation, people who are 60 years, 65 years and older, who don't naturally pick up a device and know what to do with it, stand to be left out if we are not intentional about including them. And so just like we are including technology training and digital literacy in the programs at Pelican, that mirrors what the member for St. Michael South is doing at the facilities that his ministry is responsible for, to make sure that those kinds of programs are also included, and also what the Barbados Association of Retired Persons and others are helping to support in the country. So digital inclusion among the elderly is a very, very important thing. But I want to make this further point, sir. We are about to move to the next step of the Trident ID, which is to have the ID on your mobile phone so that the card becomes less relevant, your ID is loaded on your phone, and you're able to do your business by having a validated address associated with your ID that is loaded on your phone. But the interesting thing about the Trident ID is that those who were most interested and most, I don't want to say compliant, but who were most interested in the uptake, who moved earliest, was the population 50 and over. Population 50 and over, overwhelmingly compared to the population 49 and below, were interested in the uptake of the ID. They were interested in having this digital ID. Why? Because I can sit at home and have services available to me without having to leave, without having to, especially older people who have mobility issues. So digital transformation is extremely relevant and timely and important as part of a policy on aging. And we have to make sure that when we talk about digital inclusion, we are not just creating access to services for older people, but also that we are including them in the industry of technology. So, sir, that brings me to the issue of what economists and others are now calling elder years income. The issue of income and how you can live and what you are earning as you get older. Sir, a constituent of mine came to me some time ago. She is over 80 years old, but you would not believe it. She came to me, lovely, poised, gracious lady, and she said that she was interested in working. She's interested in working in part because she needs to supplement her income, but in part because she wants to. And she said to me, you know, I know that you look at my, well, I have to look at the ID number, not at the face, to know, because, I mean, she did not at all. She looked, the most she looked like she could be is probably 62. Over 80 years old. And she wants to work. She actually needs to work. So I recall when I also had the privilege to be part of the team that was looking at the pension restructuring, that one of the options that we considered, because the consultations that we had raised it as an issue, was the extent to which we could introduce a partial pension alongside or in situations where people continue to work. Choose, let me say clearly, where people choose to continue to work or even to pick up a different job after some years of retirement. And we know that there are people who choose to do that. There are people who pick up a hobby in retirement and realize, well, hang on, I could make some money from this. But then they are constrained in that choice because they will lose their pension. And one of the things that we considered very much was the extent to which in the next cycle of pension reform, we might look at the issue of a partial pension that comes alongside older people who choose to work. Let it not be said that this government is telling people that they have to work in perpetuity. But there are people who want to, and there are people who remain productive and want to contribute. But there are also people, regrettably, who feel like they have no choice. They are at or past retirement, and they do not have enough of an income. We aim to address that similarly through the pension reform, because one of the things that is very important to understand is the need to make contributions and to ensure that a person has enough contributions to be able to earn a pension. But we also have to have a frank conversation about what people do with their income in later years. And we discussed it during the debate on the population policy. There are households talking about dependency ratio, when we talk about dependency ratio, we normally mean the extent to which a family depends on the people of working age in the household to earn. But there is almost a reverse dependency ratio, where there are households that are dependent on pensions, the pensions of older people. There are many households where it is a pension that was sending students to UE before 2018, when a former Democratic Labour Party government removed free tertiary education. There were pensions sending young people to the University of the West Indies and Community College and SJPI. If my pension has to send to school children, if my pension has to buy groceries for a household full of people, then how am I able to do the things that I need to do as an older person? How am I able to buy medication? How am I able to pay for the kind of recreation? You know, we have a program in St. Michael South Central where one of the things that we do is to help support recreational activities of some of our older people. So that if you're doing a sewing class and you need some sewing items, we want to make sure that your brain remains engaged, because your brain remaining engaged is one of the best indicators of a positive outcome. If you get ill and have to be in hospital, you have something to go back to, you have something to live for. And like it or not, that is a fact. That is a fact that doctors are now documenting. And so while we have people who want to work and choose to work, we also have people who work because they have to. And the question is, how do we consider the structure of our pensions and our pension system such that those people who want to work can, but also how do our families and communities add to what the government is investing in to, as a community, support elderly populations? Because that is what it comes to. When the member for St. Michael South says this has to be a national conversation, that's what the national conversation is about. What is each of us doing to make sure that we are caring for the elderly in our communities? But sir, others said it before me. Coming to the question of health, wellness, and longevity that the policy speaks to. The health question, as it relates to aging, does not start when a person is 50 or 60 or 70 years old. And sir, I really feel that it is high time that we get serious as a country about having frank conversations about health and wellness. I'm going to say something that people may consider controversial. There is a narrative that it is expensive to eat well. No. It is the case that foods that have lower nutritional value are often some of the cheapest foods that you can find. But I want to offer a different consideration. And it has to do with something as simple as portion control. The experts tell you to shop the perimeter of the supermarket. I mean, in our case, shop the market. All of the highly packaged foods that we think that we need, we often don't need. So that if we buy some sweet potatoes or some, I also think that we've overblown the difference in health benefits between sweet potatoes and white potatoes, because sweet potatoes are good, high in fiber, very good. White potatoes are healthy. White potatoes are healthy, right? I know people that think that rice is not healthy. I've seen a woman stop at a food truck and say, I don't do the lot of rice, I can buy macaroni pie. No, rice is a grain. It is healthy. Even white rice is healthy. A portion of food in general is the palm of your hand. A portion of sweet potato is 4 ounces. That could fit in my hand. I say all this to say that we need to start a national conversation where we understand that food is meant to nourish us. It's not a hobby. It's not a pastime, right? And there are things that we will enjoy eating. But the member for St. Michael South knows that when Kaduma is coming, he's eating 4 ounces of sweet potatoes. I see him. But what I'm saying is this. I'm not going to say that produce cannot come to be expensive, and that this government has also addressed that issue by making sure that we are able to monitor prices on some of the key things that people eat. It may be time to look at that basket of goods, to insist on certain more healthful products being included. But there's a lot that we can do if we only understand how to do it, which is to understand that, you know, most of us are no longer out in the fields working and burning 5,000 calories a day. Many of us barely move when the day comes. And if we're not intentional about getting up and walking or going to the gym or stretching, we may not move at all for a month or a year. So we don't need those 5,000 calories that our forefathers, that our foreparents needed. Some of these fixes, some of these issues can be addressed long before we get to the place where the health considerations become a financial consideration for ourselves and our families and the state. And some of the issues are simpler than we believe. As a government, we will continue to invest in finding ways to make natural, healthful food more affordable. That is a commitment that we have made and we continue to make. But similarly, I also think that there is a role to be played by those institutions of the state and others who are leading the conversation on nutrition. It is movement as well, but I'll tell you this. You can't outrun a bad diet. You can't outrun a large pizza. Your nutrition, your health profile is probably 80% your nutrition, what you put into your mouth. And you have to keep moving because your body has to understand how to move. You know what is one of the biggest risks to people as they get older? Losing your balance and your flexibility and being unable to break a fall. Remember St. Michael South experienced that in one of his team building exercises. I'm sorry, I should not laugh. He's well, he is well. No. But the truth is, sir, that there are classes now that are teaching people as they get older how to fall. Yeah. Can you imagine? So because we haven't been working on moving around and on our balance and our flexibility, now we have to learn how to fall. We have an opportunity here, sir, to make the conversation about health and wellness and longevity one that is more accessible, one where we show people that actually it is not as difficult as we think. And while this government continues to invest in making healthful food more affordable, that there's also a role for families and individuals and communities to play. It comes back to investing in sporting facilities and making sure that communities are walkable and so on. That new developments, when they go up, also have parks and have walking paths and biking paths. That's important. So that when these developments come to the Ministry of Planning needs to say, but where are people going to walk? Where are people going to run? But we also have to take some responsibility. Sir, the final point I want to make relates to another matter that was raised during this debate, which has to do with, the reference was made to retirement planning, but it's really about estate planning. Estate planning. It is a question of security of land and housing tenure, and just a question of financial and economic security as people get older. People remark on the number of derelict buildings around Barbados. Many of these derelict homes are in such a state because of estate issues, because an individual has not put together a will, has not put things in place to say, well, I want this property to pass to the member for St. Andrew. I want this part of my estate to pass to the member for St. Thomas. And then when the individual passes, there's no clarity on what should happen to this property. But not only that, the property then can't be used as an asset by the family for any other reason. And so a lot of the insecurity that we see when it comes to insecurity of dwelling and of land tenure has to do with that. One of the best things that we can do for our families and our communities is to make sure that your will, when I say your will, what is your will to be done on your passing, is documented and made known. So yes, it is about retirement and making sure that you have enough for retirement. But that is not just about you, but that is also about the question of intergenerational fairness. You know, there are many people who believe that, and perhaps it is a holdover from our colonial past, that having children is an insurance policy. Now, I want to make very clear what I'm about to say. I have a responsibility to my family, to my parents, and to my family to make sure that I am responsible for their care. That there is no way that I could be alive and working in this country, and my parents could not be receiving the appropriate and adequate care. But I want to make this further point, that if I fail to put things in place for my life cycle, for the years that I am alive, I am passing a burden on to future generations. And I want us to think about that. Because sometimes when we look at the difference between different kinds of communities around the world, what has made the difference between the levels of success in one community and the levels of success in another? The question of intergenerational wealth is not necessarily about leaving something behind. Ideally, yes, you can. But not leaving any encumbrance, if we can help it. Some of us cannot. But those of us who can do better owe it to future generations to make sure that we do not pass on that encumbrance, that responsibility to them, if we can help it. We talk a lot about intergenerational equity, and it's a principle that I very much believe in. Because while I want my niece, if something happens to me and I can't do any better, I would want my niece to care for me. But at the same time, I also feel it is my responsibility to leave behind the wherewithal for her to do so. I can do it. There's some who can't. But I do believe that the issue of estate planning, access to housing, leaving assets and making sure that your assets are well preserved for generations to come is also a consideration that we have to take. So I want to end on the question of one of the cross-cutting issues that was raised in the policy, and I'm very glad to see, so I spent many years looking at questions of gender equity in my work as an economist. And I have to say that when I reflect on the conversations that we have as a government, the member for St. Michael South made reference to it in his remarks. The conversations that we have as a government while coming up with policy in response to what we hear and see and feel from people, When I was a practitioner on the outside of government, I would have loved to believe that governments were having these conversations. Let me explain myself. Many of us who worked supporting or trying to support governments in policy spent so much time trying to get governments to understand the role of gender in these issues. And this is a government that asks 4 very key questions as a matter of course. What is the public purpose of a policy? What is it for? What will it do? Why are we doing it? What problem does it solve? What is the public purpose? What is the public mischief? Is there something about what we're doing that somebody can take advantage of and use in a way that we would not want? What is the public purpose? What is the public mischief? How can technology and innovation support or enhance what we're doing? That's a question that I often have to answer in the Ministry of Technology, that I'm happy to answer. But number 4, the most important, who are the groups of people? Which are the groups of people that stand to benefit disproportionately or suffer disproportionately if this policy were to be introduced? It is a very simple consideration. It's not high policy, but it is effective. If you apply that lens with respect to gender, with respect to age, with respect to geographical provenance, with respect to ethnicity, with respect to so many other things, you get to the heart of the question. So when it comes to gender and aging, you know, when I started doing policy work in the Caribbean, I went to a particular country, my first project. And I was asked to help that particular government understand some things that were going on in the country at the time. And one of those things was that that government found that there were so many men who were being left out in their elderly years. I mean, when I say left out, in this particular country, literally, who were more likely to be homeless, who were in very large numbers at that time, who were more likely to be left in hospital, for example, and nobody come back and care for them. The percentage of men versus women who experienced this kind of abandonment and deprivation in the years 60, 65 and above, I mean, it was shocking. But the reason really was that many of those men had what we would call visiting relationships, right? They didn't belong to any particular household or family unit. And so when it came to their older years, because they hadn't associated with a family structure, people were like, well, yeah, I know you, you look familiar, but you don't concern me. And that was the challenge that that country was facing at the time in overwhelming numbers. And the member for St. Michael South is reminding us that this is a challenge that is also faced in Barbados. And so it means that, again, just like with the health question, the question of how gender impacts aging and what are the gendered dynamics, what are the social dynamics that impact aging, doesn't start now. It starts at the time that those individuals were building relationships and making family decisions. Those family decisions are now affecting the way that they live today. It doesn't mean that we say, okay, well, that's a matter for you. It means that the investment that we make, the policies that we come up with, probably start at a different place. You know, when I worked in the UN system, it was called UNIFEM at the time, had a program called Share the Care. And it was really just about helping families understand that care responsibility is everyone's concern. Yeah, it is women and men and communities sharing care responsibility in ways that they can manage.
You all remember has 2 more minutes.
And, thank you, sir. And I like to think, when I look across the last 30 years of family evolution in Barbados, that programs like that have had an impact. I don't know what the numbers say in the studies that are done in the Ministry of People Empowerment, but anecdotally, it seems to me that there are many more fathers and other custodians of children and others who need care that are taking on that responsibility. And so these issues that are represented in this policy, sir, on aging are not just issues about aging. They're issues about our social structures and our values and what we choose to invest in. And how that investment in care is actually productive. It's not just that households are consuming the money that we spend on care. It is that those investments help people, allow people to continue to meet their full productive capacity. So, sir, just like the policy on population, just like the financial measures that we've taken, where this government has determined that there will be a 50% tax credit on elderly care facilities and hospices. Sir, that is what I mean by policy coherence. So it is not just in the Ministry of People Empowerment, it's not just in the Ministry of Community Development, it's not just in the Ministry of Finance. All across government, we are looking to see how we are able to invest in a common understanding and implementation of the things that matter to Barbadians. And so, sir, I wholeheartedly support this policy, but beyond that, I also wholeheartedly support the call that has been made for us to continue having this very important national conversation and to identify the ways in which each of us can and must take responsibility for every sector of our population, including and especially the elderly who have brought us here, on whose shoulders we stand, who have brought this Barbados to this place in our development, and to whom we have a clear responsibility. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged.
Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wish to commend the Honourable Minister, Member for St. Michael South, for continuing to pursue this policy and indeed to work towards implementing those goals that are necessary for our elderly or aged persons in Barbados to be recognized for their contribution over those many years, especially when they would have come through some very harsh economic times. Times were hard, families were large, and those parents and guardians worked beyond human call to be able to build this foundation that we now stand on, and stand on proudly, many of us not even knowing the kind of hard work and dedication that our foreparents made in order to be able to reach this level in our society where our housing is great. Our housing facilities are fantastic. The standard that was built for us, Mr. Speaker, has really caused me to be so proud to be a Barbadian. And so this policy, sir, properly coordinated by Dr. Lawrence Nurse, if you will let me call a few names, sir, Professor Dwayne Devonish, Dr. Natasha Sobers from the University of the West Indies, and financial support from PAHO, have really caused us to become more aware. It has jerked many of us of our sleep to be able to understand where we are at in Barbados and what we witness on a daily basis that is really not Barbadian for us at all, because our elderly persons who have laid the foundation in this country are the ones who are so poorly treated. And I believe that once the rest of Barbados becomes familiar with what the policy outlines and the plans that are in place, that they will be better sensitized as to what their roles are in helping to sustain or extend the lives of our senior citizens who are the trailblazers of this society. Mr. Speaker, sir, they worked in the plantations, in the houses of the massa and the white people. They worked in the roads. They did all kinds of honest things in order to raise families, sir, and not just small families either. They're families of that we all know that had 12 and 15 and 17 children, and not one of them, Mr. Speaker, sir, became a criminal, because there were standards in the home. And the older adults made sure that when those parents are out in the field, that the big sister made sure that the baby was fed. That they went to the standpipe and they cut the water and cleaned up the dishes or the wares, whatever we call them at that time, sir. And I can speak with an element of authority because I came through a period where everybody in the village where we were raised was poor, but the dignity was there. And the statement our foreparents used to us was, though poor, don't look poor. Yes, we went to school barefooted. Yes, we had one book to write everything in, and a pencil had to be cut in 4 to be able to facilitate 4 children. And everybody wanted the rubber, Mr. Speaker. We went to school barefooted, Mr. Speaker, and I speak with a measure of authority and experience because that was the mantra that obtained in those days. And I too would have been one of those who went to school barefooted and wore hand-me-downs. I had to go to the standpipe and bring water and to make a wood fire because you had to cut down the trees 2 or 3 weeks before when you went into the gully, and then go back to make sure it was dry and come back to make a meal. And big sisters were the ones who were deprived of going to school at 10 and 12 and 14 years old, simply because they had to nurture the babies when mothers went into the plantation with young babies, 2 months old if so old, to head the canes, to cut them, to jerk them on their heads and go up on the Bedford truck and throw them off. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am so proud to be a part of this institution today, where we, as a government, will want to seek to make sure that we work towards this initiative of letting young Barbadians and others who know and some who do not know that the seniors of this country, the elderly in this country, are the profound people, some of whom had never gone to school either, but they knew that the mores and the values of the society had to be upheld. And they had Christian faith to make sure that they could not go to church themselves at times, but the children had to go because there were so many children, the hand-me-downs worked. And children were touted, because I was touted, so I know from what background I speak. When I had all my older sisters' dress and somebody else's shoes, and of course my personality never bothered me, because I would laugh at it, and then I would look for some odd thing about them and say, but look, your buttons are missing, to make them feel badly too. But I'm saying the element of pride and the connectivity among us made us very, very proud Barbadians, and we've lost so much of that because my generation, well, I should say perhaps the generation of the other members in here who are younger, would not have known of that because they do not know the stories or the circumstances under which they were raised were not the same. And of course, people like to hold their pride, and we can understand that. But we have to trumpet these stories, Mr. Speaker, so that others get to understand. Very few of us in here perhaps would have been born with a gold spoon in our mouths. We had to do all the cleaning. We had to go and cut the cuscus grass. We had to carry out the cow, the sheep, feed the chickens, do all kinds of things, had no water in the house. We had to do so much to be able to survive. But it has brought us thus far. And our young people are standing on platforms that our seniors in this country raised over the many years, and we really must make sure that those who remain among us are well looked after, their care, their support, their housing environs, the meals they eat, their recreation, whatever it is, will help to bring them to a level where they will understand, these are my children, my grandchildren whom I've given up my life to before are now making me comfortable in what I call my twilight years. And so I want to say how happy I am to be a part of this institution today, Mr. Speaker, sir, to be able to see this element of the policy being discussed. And I know that there were efforts before, sir, to be able to bring sometime way back in the late 80s, or mid-80s, where there were efforts to be able to reach out and service our seniors who are the bedrock of this society. So the equity and inclusion in the policy, the accessibility, the care, the self-fulfillment, the freedom from harm, and the participation in activities and so are extremely critical if our seniors are to be made comfortable and to know we are valued for the contribution we have made towards building Barbados. I want to laud the efforts of the administration of the Barbados Labour Party, sir, when the other honourable member for St. Thomas would have been alive and extremely active, and to speak to the vision that was so forthcoming and the initiatives that came out of it with the National Assistance Board. And as a young girl, I saw houses not only in rural Barbados, but urban Barbados being upgraded and built to facilitate the needs of our seniors who were going down in their years and could not even maintain their properties because of the poverty through which they had come. Their spending power really was not there. And of course they would have retired, but whatever they were receiving for the pension would have been so small, and the cost of living rising all the time, they were not able to purchase the items they needed, whether it be for the bedroom or for clothing or meals or furniture or whatever. They were unable to do that. And so that National Assistance Board started with the upgrades of houses generally, putting in the little pit toilet in the yard, but making sure that whatever was the seat, that it was more comfortable and accommodating for families. And then, of course, the Social Transformation Ministry of the early 1990s, where the Honourable Member for St. Michael East would have been an Honourable Minister and so on. And the vision that unfolded when they recognized our seniors are not getting the best of deals, therefore, we must look after those persons whose houses slip off the props if there was high wind or there was a lot of water passing under and their houses got burnt as well, that the Lancaster House was developed to facilitate them as a temporary measure that they can have the comfort and the dignity that they deserve. And then, of course, the National Assistance Board and bringing in those persons who could serve the seniors when their children had gone off to work, or there were parents of adults who had no children of their own, but most of the family would have gone overseas or gone on to other jobs and so, and not living in rural Barbados or in urban Barbados, as the case may be, in the same way. And then, of course, the numbers started to grow exponentially. The Vauxhall Senior Home was established. The Clygolop Center for Homeless Men, that too was established. And of course, the Community Technology Program, where I had an old lady who used to call me day in and day out, and she said, I learned the computer. And she said, I made postcards, and she was in her late 80s. And that blessed my heart, and I would like to see it come back in a more comprehensive way, because even I, Mr. Speaker, sir, can't cope so well with the technology at all. If I didn't have that young grandson at the house with me, I'm not so sure what would happen. However, we want for our seniors to be on the cutting edge. And that is where the intergenerational linkages come in. Because without that grandson in the house with me, although he's very impatient at times, and I get angry and tell them, I'm going to take you from my house, I'm going to send you where you live, come back and show me again. But those seniors didn't have that privilege. And so that project that the government instituted helped them to better, the seniors to better be able to become on the cutting edge or so in learning the technology. And then you have the community, the exercising and the dancing and the drama. And I have a senior citizen, sir, who is now a centenarian and going to 101st birthday come October. May the Lord spare her life. Who did the drama program. She would dance and she would dramatize and do storytelling and all that under the Honourable Member for St. Michael East and the program that he did when he was the Honourable Minister in Social Transformation. The swimming program, the Honourable Member for St. John spoke about earlier this afternoon. The alternative care program, Mr. Speaker, all of those areas help to kindle or rekindle the spirits of our seniors who would have retired, gotten the little pension, and they mostly remained at home. I believe that we are on the right track. And I trust that we will continue to make sure that we not only do it as a government, but continue, as the Honourable Member for St. Michael South said, have the connections with other institutions to be able to make the difference. When my mother came down with her Alzheimer's, 25 or so, it would be more than 25 years, sir, because she would have died about 24 years ago. So it would have been like 7 years before that. It was the Alzheimer's Association that contacted me and said, I understand, and I want to thank the leader, sir, for the efforts that she has made over those years with her teams to make sure that education is shared and demonstrations and seminars and so on. Similarly, we have the Prison Fellowship that does excellent work. They give wheelchairs, they give pampers, they do so much to be able to help our seniors because many of them are still very impoverished. And I'm happy to know that the Prison Fellowship is doing its part. Also, sir, the Barbados, the association to do with the Salvation Army. For many years, the Salvation Army has also been in the vanguard, helping with such projects. The Alliance for Homelessness, they too play their part under that young man to be able to help to feed the poor in the country. And of course, BART, that is now doing its part. Yes, the level it is at, people may say it's for middle-class people and so on. It does not matter because there are middle-class people who today don't have $1,000 in their name, not even 100 they don't have, because of paying for children going overseas and studying, upgrading the house, doing all the different things. And so we welcome all of them, but we must not forget the Bar Brits as well, because many of our people, particularly females, went over to England and they did the nursing. And when they retired, they returned to Barbados and they joined into institutions because they can speak proudly of what would have been then the Gordon Cummins District Hospital. And the nurses who came to assist with programs to be able to get the clients living in there, or the residents, sensitized and to do the exercise and learn so many different things and craft and all that. I think that we are on the right track and we are laying a foundation that not only Barbados, but other Caribbean islands can take a leaf out of our book because we are willing to work with them as we always do, because they too will have an aging population. Now, I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I should include, sir, if you will allow me, the faith-based institutions, community groups and volunteers. They too do their part in making a difference. And when we hear, sir, the statement that says, a village without elders is like a well without water, we really need to step back and give thought to it. A village without elders is like a village without water, because the elders are the ones with the institutional knowledge and the history that can share it with the younger folk. I nearly said, sir, like me. Share it with the younger folk that they can understand Barbados was not always like this. Our lifestyles were not always like this. We had to go to the gullies and pick the breadfruits in order to come back and cook a meal. There was not always meat with them, Mr. Speaker, but the way it was prepared, it was tasty, and here we are, most of us, still much alive and kicking because our foreparents did what they had to do to keep us healthy. We had cows, and we had a source of milk, fresh from the cows. All you did was to warm it, and you had your good nutrients in your meals. Those old people were those seniors were so great. Mr. Speaker, sir, what they also did that should come right back to us is for us to look at the traditions, those mores and values that they upheld. The traditions, the games, the storytelling, and children will sit around in the neighborhood and they will play Pussycat Corner. They got exercise. And the seniors had their eyes out on them, especially the girls, because my mother had 7 girls and 1 boy, so she had no choice. Look out for her girl children. However, we got the exercise. We shared ideas. We shared the fruits and vegetables we grew in our... The Barbados was so different then. Are we talking to our children now? And are we working towards those intergenerational linkages that are necessary that our children can get to understand and tolerate? It is not only that granny or granddad is old, it is that, yes, the memory may be going and coming, but we can do things to help to stimulate them so we can get our young children to play Ludo with granddad, or a game of dominoes, or a game of Mora. Mr. Speaker, sir, that you yourself might be so young you may not even be familiar with what is Mora. Or to stoop down and make sure you have on a good pants under your dress and pitch. You dig your own king hole and you would pitch. That was a form of exercise because you had to stoop. So you didn't have people with knees and the arthritis getting into their system, Mr. Speaker, like mine would be now. The whole lifestyle that we lived is going through the window because you can now call up a business place and say, deliver some chicken, deliver some rotis, deliver whatever, and we're not cooking and preparing those meals that will have the necessary nutrients to build our bodies and keep us as healthy as before. So, where's the culture of Barbados? Hitty-bitty, so fast and tight, shut up your lap, tight. And when children understand that game, they will play it. And we played the game, Mr. Speaker, nobody ever touched our person. We played it day in and day out. Roll, nanny, roll your banks and go, but nanny, what you going to do? Children don't have that now. You hear boom, 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 some rasta something, and I'm not commenting on the rastas in any negative way, or some dub something, and our children's heads are so confused. We need to get back to basics. I'm not saying go back to the older days when you did not have the privacy in your home and all that. I am saying an interweaving of the past with the present will help our young people to be able to better understand what their roles are. The community life, the life skills, the supervision of children, prioritizing, cutting the cloth to suit the style. So that when you didn't have X amount of dollars to do a lot, you bought a small amount of this and a small amount of that, and there were still healthy meals that our children were able and our families were able to use. So the creativity was there. It would have been to do with industries. Industry, I remember as a young girl, we had something in Richmond Hall called the Bright Star Lodge. And every time you had a 25 cents, you would put it on the lodge. You know what that did, Mr. Speaker, sir? At the end of the year, but sometimes it was in time for September school too, where when you go and you took away that money, it would help to go towards your pair of shoes or your textbooks that you had to pay for. There was nothing free in my time. No free school meals, no free textbooks, nothing. And therefore we knew, do not go now and buy a Polar. Make sure you put that at 25 cents, go down to the Bright Star Lodge. Go down to the Civic in Bridgetown and put on your little 50 cents. And at the end of the year, coming into Christmas, you were able to get your Christmas dress. It wasn't any Christmas tree. You cut a mulberry tree or casuarina tree and put on sweetie paper. And it was the most beautiful Christmas tree you could ever want. It didn't have any lights because there was no electricity, no running water, but we lived together in peace and harmony, and we shared and we cared and we sang songs, and we were all well respected and supervised by adults. We were not left alone to go hanky-panky and anything. We were all supervised. We need to get back to rearing children and teaching them they must be tolerant, they must be respectful, they must be creative, and they must show love and appreciation for whatever they have. That is what our seniors did. There was the industry and so on coming through. The other thing is, everybody now wants to have a patio, not a patio, a lawn. All four parents made sure they put 2 okra seeds in there, in the little extra land they had. And they're the ones who worked so hard in the cane piece that they were able to access the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act, properties that they could build the houses, that they can do whatever. Sheep, goat, pig, rabbit, everything we raise, now we have to come to town and buy. Who is linking with those young people to tell them you can still put a set of ducks in the yard, you can put them in a pen. You can still grow a few vegetables. You can still grow a few fruits. You can still do so many things in the space that is available instead of leaving everything to run to ruins. It really is wrong. So thrift is there. But you know what is most important, Mr. Speaker, sir? The respect that was due. So you never walk by and saw your neighbors and never say, good morning, Miss So-and-so, good morning, Mr. So-and-so. You spoke with them. You showed respect in the bus. You did not fight, you did not curse, you did not threaten. Because you know when you reach back home, there will be some kind of punishment that will be there for you. Every Sunday, sir, we went to church, or Saturday for that matter. Where are our children now on Sunday mornings? Watching the TV, playing with the devices. Some of what they're watching, no parent seems to even know, because if I had to look at it, if I could hear cursing, but then you know what that is about. But no monitoring of our systems. We are making them wear clothing as adults would. Nippy. Half naked then, Mr. Speaker, sir. Body parts exposed. Some of them body is not even as pretty as mine as an old body. And where are the standards? Where are the standards? Those seniors whom we are pushing in a corner now are the ones who upheld the standards in the society, and they were looked up to despite the fact that there were many children and there were. Yes, our lifestyles have changed. Many of us now will have no children at all, or we might have 1 or 2. But there are other families that have large numbers of children. Who is nurturing them? And then when you see the children disorderly, you say, you just use expletives, little boy, come back here, little girl, come back here. And the mother's behind you, he only buys scarce. He used to behaving bad. And we are losing it in our societies all the time. We grew up in a society, Mr. Speaker, so we had little or nothing. But you weren't hearing about murders. You weren't hearing about breaking of houses like we are now. Something is definitely wrong with what we are doing, and our seniors are in the heart of the maltreatment that is being meted out to them by the same children whose foreparents or whose parents they raised and raise them in the correct way. We need to step back, look at where we have come from and what we have achieved, and if it is not working for us, we need to go back and look at some of those morals and those values and so on and bring them back into the system. Now, I want, Mr. Speaker, sir, to also refer to the valuing of education, because some of our children don't go to school at all. And you see the changes in this society, where you had the Rockland bus and the elite bus and so on. People had to behave well in the buses. Now we have sought to assist ordinary people will being able to get a piece of the financial pie. And my senior citizens are getting into ZRs, and the money is being taken away from them if they give a $5, not a cent in change back. Some of them are getting in, and the smoking is so deep that the old people can't even cope. I don't plan to get in any, because I know somebody will beat me. Because they will say, hand me back my money and let me get out. And perhaps I might be assaulted, and I'm not so sure what I will do, because I'm not as old as some of the seniors who have no voice. I am saying we try to empower these folks, give them the resources, get them to get into business, and then our seniors are getting the worst part of it all. It needs to stop now, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also want to, Mr. Speaker, sir, to to indicate what is happening today, because I know my time is limited. The Elder Affairs Department, in which my colleague, Dr. Wiltshire, and I work, and of course in association with others at the 1000 family and so on, we have interactions with each other to make sure that reporting and so takes place. Some people call him, Mr. Speaker, abandoned for a whole week with nothing to eat, but it is their house. I can understand in some instances, sir, where there may be families, where it's a mother and 2 children, the daughter of the senior, whether it be male or female, and that person has to get to work by a certain time. They have to hold the work in order to be able to pay the utility bills, because the pension that the senior is getting might be just a little small amount. And in all goodwill, they've put the food in the flask, cover it down. The food is there in the flask, but you know what? They tighten it so fast, Mr. Speaker, Ma is home alone. And when that person returns at 5 in the evening, Ma hasn't had a single thing to eat. It was not an ill will of the person, but it is because they wanted to make sure I can get to work on time. And Ma is there with nothing to eat. Where are the neighbors that Ma used to clean their own little behinds? Where are those neighbors that Pa used to help them get a tin of sardine and a pack of biscuits to survive? We have lost it in most of our communities, if not all, and it is a very frightening experience, Mr. Speaker, sir. I must tell you. Cruel treatment to seniors, to elderly people, beatings, starving, I mentioned that, robbing, teeth in them, Mr. Speaker. Every day the reports come in. There's documentation where people write letters. They send a note. They send WhatsApp messages, because the most popular phone in Barbados now is mine. And I can understand that, and I appreciate people reporting it to me, because that has always been my life in the community where I was raised. People come and say, I need to get so guide me, miss. They will call me Miss Ford, they will call me by my nickname, whatever. I will continue till I die once I have my mental faculties intact. And I'm saying, if you hear the stories, Mr. Speaker, you will cry. Our seniors, most of them I should say, are not getting a good deal at all, especially with friends and families, those 2 F's. And it has to be curtailed. They have laid the foundation for us. We must give them the love and the affection and the care that is necessary. And this policy, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the legislation that will come will save it. But you know what, Mr. Speaker, that is not all. The old people are being put in the worst room in the house to sleep with the water coming through from the rain. And the young people are in the beds and living and having a good time and swearing and cursing and insulting them. And then what is the worst, Mr. Speaker, sir? They're taking them into an attorney at law or attorneys at law. Power of attorney. Deed of gift. I can remember vividly an old lady who used to walk from Hillaby in St. Andrew with a big basket on her head from what we used to call the cane lily. Goalie was her name. And she would walk from Hillaby, come through Jackson, where we see her going at Sherwin School in the 70s where I worked. With that load on her head, the breadfruits, the bananas, the cassava, you named it, to sell. And then one day I saw in the Nation newspaper, I think it was, Goalie's picture in a house in Green Hill, living under a cellar because the son or the daughter who got married moved her out and put her under the cellar on the plain dirt, Mr. Speaker. And they're living inside the house. And it is going on in almost every community now, sir. And it has to be addressed. And I pray that this policy we're working towards, as well as the legislation, will cause this to come to an end and some people go to prison. You cannot treat human beings like that. It is a good thing that they know them, because that's not how they were taught by the same seniors that they are now ill-treating. It has to stop, Mr. Speaker. That deed of gift and that power of attorney. And you know what? Although it is rumor, according to what I heard, some of the people at that level are benefiting by the same old people who, when they get there, the head turned upside down. They can't remember. And they put in their own name and get the property, or they put in the children's name. And I'm hearing it. And I'm not casting any aspersions, sir, on anyone here or anyone out there. It is just that is the information that is coming. When the old folks sit and talk with us, those are the things that are being revealed. It is wrong, and a court of law has to treat to it in that respect. My other beef, sir, and that's why I'm so proud that this legislation is going to come, this policy has been already prepared, is to do with healthcare support. Unfortunately, there are folk are being abandoned at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. I cannot imagine how a mother or father, grandmother, grandfather, cousin, auntie, because some aunties didn't have any children of their own, and we also know that the birth rate in this country is dropping. So therefore, our seniors will not be able to cope in the way they would before. But anyhow, that is beside the point right now. But they're being taken to the hospital and left with suitcases, abandoned lives that made contributions to build this country, being abandoned at a hospital that we know is the only premier hospital we have. And sometimes their conditions do not even deserve for them to go to the hospital. They just need somebody to take them to the polyclinic to get the treatment. But you know why they got to go to the hospital with a suitcase and dump them? Because those who take them there want the properties that they have. And I want for us to continue to have synergies with the constabulary, with other institutions, to be able to sit and put on the table, these are the challenges we are seeing, that we would like to have them addressed with alacrity. It is the only way we're going to be able to stop it, Mr. Speaker. Bodies in the morgue. Persons worked a whole lifetime. And because they're in their 80s or their 90s or even in their 50s and 60s, the Alzheimer's might have kicked in, or the dementia, or some other ailment, diabetes, whatever, these folks, after they pass away, they are in the morgue at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital or a morgue at another funeral home and not being buried for 8 years and 10 years, Mr. Speaker, sir. What kind of human beings will these people be that live in the same houses that the old people work in the sun and the rain, cutting canes, heading them, going into town as hawkers, with walking from St. Thomas to Bridgetown, St. Lucie to St. Speightstown, St. Philip to Oistins in their time, to be able to raise families and give the children the benefits of free education or whatever education it is, or lifestyle, and then you leave them and their bodies in the morgue. I have a plan for that. It was done before, and I will share it with the Honourable Prime Minister and her team, because there has to be some clearance of that morgue, and there has to be dignity. Even though they're dead, they need to have a proper burial or an urn that the families will come in, because they're living in the houses. They can pay for the turnout and give those old people the dignity that they deserve. So care for family and loving one another, for love is of God, that too seems to have gone through the window, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member has 2 more minutes.
Yes, please. I want to highly commend the Honourable Minister and his team for the effort, and I want to also thank all those agencies that have come on board or have been developed through the government or through private sector to be able to work with the People Empowerment Ministry and with other agencies, with charities and all that, to make a difference. And I trust that as we go through this discussion, as we go through the planning for our people to be given the best of care and the best of whatever services that can be afforded, that we will be able to do it. If the shoe is on our feet, we will feel the pinch, though, Mr. Speaker. And somehow, the shoe is not on the feet of most of those who are duping the old people, so they don't feel the squeeze, but they will get old too if they live. And they will then see what the new generation will do and what will befall them. It really is wrong. And my final comment, sir. Every last one of those seniors need the care, the security, the safety, the grooming, the rest, the exercise, the therapy, whatever. We can do it as people living in villages and in communities. But I know I'm going to close on another point. I do not care who will curse me. I'm the only child my mother had that she named after her. I'm the only child she has with this personality. I have a profound difficulty, Mr. Speaker, sir, with a group of people going into villages and communities, and old people are buying produce from them because they can't get out some toothpaste or toothbrush or toilet tissue or some item. And they're both of the checks, Mr. Speaker, I spoke it here already. And I know that I hear I'm getting criticized. Nobody can criticize me because I don't beg, I don't take anything for politics. I hit my pocket or I stay quiet in the corner. Nobody will hold up anything and say I gave it to her. So I can talk. Concluding, sir, those senior citizens who cannot get out and they're doing that kind of purchase, if they spend $50 to get the items done, Mr. Speaker, because they can't get out and the children not looking at them, nobody in the neighborhood is, which is wrong, and they spend $50, say, for example, sir, they were getting $400 per month, not per 2 weeks, so it's $800. The checks are being taken, Mr. Speaker. I speak from a background of knowledge on that, and I'm going to close on that because that has to be curtailed. The checks are being taken. If there's $50 they spend, the $50 is being taken out. It is $800 if, on average, if you want me to say that. And then you know what, Mr. Speaker? You know what, sir? $30 per check. $60 more is being taken from that $800. And then people are going in the bank, the persons who are doing it, and standing in a line. That is why I've written and asked my permanent secretary again, our permanent secretary in the Ministry of People Empowerment, let us have a meeting with the bankers. Let us have some meetings with the police officers, because it is the worst evil anybody could do to see somebody downtrodden and to walk on them, and then you go in a bank with 35 and 40 checks from senior citizens. $30 a check. Multiply that, Mr. Speaker, by 30. I hardly went to school. I never sat in a Fifth Farm yet, sir, except I went to look for a friend, so people might say I'm an idiot. Multiply that, sir, by $30 per check. And then you will be able, sir, with your brilliance, determine what is happening to our seniors. I want the legislation like yesterday morning. And I pray to God that the policy and the framework that we have will be put in place, the sensitization across communities, and of course that legislation will bring some of them to the fore, because our seniors are the most valuable things that can happen to us in this society or any society, because they have given us the life and prepared the platform for us to be able to rise to a level that can make a difference. We must cherish them and thank God for them and their lives. And so, sir, I wish to thank you sincerely for giving me the opportunity, and I look forward and ask God to help us all to live, to institute these measures, because any life that is saved, whether old or young, is important to us in this society where we live. I wish to thank you, sir.
Honourable Mr. Michael East. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that further consideration of the resolution be postponed.
Question that further consideration of this resolution be postponed. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. Further consideration of the bill is hereby postponed. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm commended to lead the 2023 to 2028 National Policy on Aging for Barbados, making healthy and active aging a reality for all.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, Mr. Speaker, is a day that we introduced this national policy on aging, and it is a day that we acknowledge our seniors. I know that we will postpone debate on the resolution for another date. However, while we are preparing not only for the present but also for the future of our seniors, we also have had the opportunity today to celebrate as well the achievements of one of our own Barbadians, a Barbadian of whom I am very close to because her mom was living in my own constituency in St. Michael's Southeast, and one whose achievements I feel very personal in terms of celebrating. It is not easy, Mr. Speaker, for us to even sometimes stand in this place and speak in front of a number of people, and I know that Sade Williams has carried the weight of Barbadians cheering her on, but also having very high expectations today. And I think on behalf of the entire Parliament, certainly on behalf of the Prime Minister and all of Barbados, I want to take this opportunity as we adjourn the House to certainly congratulate her on this particular achievement, placing 7th in the 400 meters. I know we would all want gold, but I think that based on what she has achieved thus far, this is still particularly significant and very dear to the hearts of all Barbadians. And so I would want to take this opportunity to congratulate her. As we break for the summer recess, Mr. Speaker, I know that this has been a quite intense few months. I don't think that we would have made it through if it was not with the dint of effort from certainly the drafters and persons within these the Solicitor General's chambers, persons who have been drafting legislation to be able to bring the legislation that we have done so into this chamber. That has impacted on the lives of ordinary Barbadians. We would not be able to do the business of Parliament, obviously, if it was not for the clerks of Parliament and all of the ancillary staff. And we are certainly grateful to all of them for the assistance that they provide to us at every session, whether it is on short notice or otherwise. I want to thank as well the ancillary staff who provide the necessary support in this institution, as well as the catering staff, and no doubt the Barbados Police Service as well, who provides our security. And of course, Mr. Speaker, the public for watching and also for engaging with us. The public gallery is not as full as it used to be, but I know that now the technology has changed and many people prefer to watch the proceedings online and to follow at a later stage what is happening certainly within this particular chamber. But I want to thank them as well for participating in our various committees. Many ordinary Barbadians have been able now to witness 3 of our committees fully functioning. And we look forward to being able, particularly with the majority that we have as a government, to being able to continue to consult and to engage with the wider Barbadian public, to be able to have them to input in various pieces of legislation. And I say that, Mr. Speaker, because I think it is important that as we break, that we understand and appreciate that when we have such a huge responsibility on our shoulder, which has been given to us by way of the mandate of the people, it is important that we do not take it for granted. And sometimes we may not always get it right, but the onus is on us to make sure that we keep the consultations going, we keep the lines of communication going with the general public to be able to make sure that the legislation that we pass in this chamber redounds to the benefit of all Barbadians across these lands. We've had a number of achievements this year, apart from the committees. And I know that there have been various pieces of legislation, some controversial, some not so controversial, some that have impacted significantly the lives of ordinary Barbadians. And I look forward to us continuing to impact, particularly with the Health Services Amendment bill that is currently before the committee, or what we call the Bush legislation, Mr. Speaker, that I know every Barbadian, every MP is anxious to be able to see pass within our next session. We also are looking forward to other upcoming legislation in the form of the human tissue transplant bill, as well as the stormwater management bill, the metrology bill and the copyright bill. Those will be coming on the agenda for the next sitting of Parliament. We have had, obviously, some crossing of the floor in the course of this particular session, so we've not been without the comedy of a Parliament that has had to encounter that, and certainly a political party. But I think that we have witnessed, certainly within the last few weeks and months, the challenges certainly that the leader of the opposition is facing, trying to get his act together, and certainly that political party. And I hope that while we take this recess, that they would certainly pay attention to what is happening, and that they too will take a moment to recess and to reflect on what is happening and the examples that are being set for the people of this country, and certainly for the governance of this country, because it does not make sense that the leadership of the country is fighting amongst itself, whether on this side or on any side. And I would hope that whatever those issues are certainly put to rest in due course and in the interest of all Barbadians. Mr. Speaker, I would like therefore to thank all of my colleagues for their participation in the debates. They have been in full attendance for the most part. Some are out of the jurisdiction presently. Some are getting ready to certainly take their holidays with their children and their families, which I know is much overdue. And I would want to wish everybody certainly a safe remainder of the summer vacation, as well as to you, Mr. Speaker, because you and certainly the Deputy Speaker have provided the guidance that is needed in this chamber, trying to keep the peace on many occasions as necessary, and doing a wonderful job in very difficult circumstances. And we are grateful to you for the leadership that you have provided to us as well in this place also. So with those few words, Mr. Speaker, speaking on the adjournment, I therefore beg to move that this House be adjourned until the 17th of September at 10 a.m.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 17th day of September 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 17th day of September 2024 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.